Chapter 16, Saving Objects and Text. This chapter explains serialization, which is the process of saving an object data to a file so it can be loaded back later. Deserialization. It shows how to make classes serializable and explains common issues such as serial version UID version mismatches. So now I'll hand it over to Capello to explain Dungeon Game.
Right, no problem, man. I'll explain Dungeon Game now. So, in Dungeon Games, what happens is Dungeon Game. What it does is implement serializable, so its objects can be converted into a byte stream serialized and later reconstructed deserialized. Example for saving game states to a file, or sending it over a network. You know, class Dungeon Game implements serializable, you know, right? As a regular, instance variable, this will be included when the object is serialized. So public integer x equals 3. The transient, keyword tells Java to skip this field during serialization. When this object is deserialized, y will come back as its default value 0, not 4 because its value was never saved. Because it's been deserialized, its value was never saved. So transit long y equals 4. Another regular field private is private but will still be serializable. Serialization ignores access modifiers, so this will be saved and restored. So private short z equals 5. Get getter for x returns the current value of x, reflect the save value of the deserialization. So integer get x empty brackets return x. Getter for y after deserialization, this will return 0 since y is transient and its value isn't persistent. So long get y empty brackets returns y. Now getter for z private field but accessible through this public-ish package default method. So short get z returns z. Alright, that's my dungeon game. That's a dungeon game. So implement serializable so its object can be converted into a byte stream. Serialize and let it reconstruct deserialized for saving the game state to a file or sending it over to a network. So that's pretty much what I'm dealing with for dungeon game. Then over to Letabo for dungeon game. For dungeon tests.
Okay, so for dungeon test, right, what we'll do is that we'll demonstrate how to serialize, like to save and deserialize, which is to load a dungeon game object. What Kabelo was explaining. Then going into our dungeon test class, so within our main method, right, we'll be creating a new dungeon game object. So dungeon game D equals to new dungeon game. Then we'll be printing out the sum of y, x, and z before serialization. So our x will be equal to x, y equal to 4, z will equal to 5, then it will give us a total of 12. Okay, as you can see, we're getting the x values, y values, z values. Then within our try, right, what we'll do is that we create a file output stream to save the object. So with the file output stream, file equals to new file output stream, dg ser. Then we create an object output stream for writing objects. So as you can see here, then we serialize the dungeon game object with double O is write object, then we close that output stream with the double O is close. Then when we want to create a file input stream to read the object, we put it in file input stream FIS equals to new file input stream. Then we create an object input stream for reading the objects. So OIS. Then we deserialize the object from the file. So D equals to that again in brackets OIS read object. Then we close the input stream. Then when if there are any exceptions, so it will just print out any error that occurs during the serialization and deserialization.
Yeah.
Then we print the sum again after deserialization. So x will equal to 3, y equals to 0 since it's not saved, then z will be 5. So we get a total of 8. So as you can see, the when we run our program, so we did print out B, which was 12, as you can see here. Then the new sum with the y equals to 0, we have 8. Yeah, that's it for chapter 16. Okay, done.